This movie begins with a scene of a man working on soldering apparatus in the evening, with his young daughter sitting next to him and smiling. Someone knocks on the door and the man opens it. It was robbers, and one of them, with the words "You can't escape fate," hit the man on the head with a bat, and then they abused and killed his wife and daughter right in front of him. The perpetrators were soon detained and put on trial. The case is assigned to a young assistant prosecutor, Nick. Shortly before the trial, Nick informs Clyde that the prosecution does not have enough evidence, so they have agreed with Darby that he will testify against Ames, and in return he will get a reduced prison sentence. Upon hearing this, our hero begs Nick not to make a deal with Darby, and to do everything he can to make sure both criminals get a fair punishment for the crime. Nick, however, says that the deal has already been made. In the end, Ames was sentenced to death, and Darby received a 3-year prison sentence. As they leave the courthouse, the satisfied criminal shakes Nick's hand, and a grief-stricken Clyde notices this. 10 years pass, and Nick comes to work as usual, after which, together with his assistant Sarah, he goes to the execution of Ames. The woman will be present at such an event for the first time and is therefore nervous. Nick notices this and assures Sarah that after the painless injection, the man will simply fall asleep forever. However, after the sentence is carried out, Ames dies in terrible agony, and his last words were, "You're executing the wrong man." Nick is concerned about what has happened, consults with his colleagues, and suggests that the machine may have been deliberately damaged by someone. However, Nick soon receives an empty drip with the phrase "You can't escape your fate" on it. Nick recalls that this phrase was once uttered in the courtroom by Darby. The police immediately go after the criminal. Meanwhile, Darby is having fun in his apartment, and suddenly the phone rings. The man is warned that the police are approaching. Anonymous orders the perpetrator to run across the roof of the houses to escape, and informs him that a police car with a stunned driver inside is already parked nearby. The criminal instantly climbs into the car, and taking away the gun, orders the driver to go. Soon they find themselves on the outskirts of the city. The driver gets out of the car and removes his wig and glasses, under which Clyde appears. Darby recognizes the man and tries to shoot him, but from the handle of the gun suddenly jump out of the needles and digs into the criminal's arm. Our hero informs Darby that he has just been paralyzed by a special poison that paralyzes but does not affect the nervous system, and leaves the victim able to feel all the pain. As night falls, we see Clyde talking to an immobile and terrified man in an abandoned warehouse. Clyde applies tourniquets to the criminal so he doesn't die prematurely from blood loss. Our hero says that the adrenaline injection will keep Darby from passing out, and the mirror hanging in front of him, with a picture of Clyde's dead family, will allow the criminal to watch the process. Clyde captures the whole process on camera. The very next day, the police find Darby's mutilated body, and Nick guesses that Clyde is the only person who might have a motive. That same day, Clyde is arrested. However, during the interrogation of the suspect, Nick faces a big problem, because there is no direct evidence against Clyde, and motive alone is not enough to put the suspect away. The assistant prosecutor asks the suspect several questions, to which Clyde answers, but evasively. When satisfied with the work done, Nick is about to leave. Clyde declares that it will be impossible to prove his guilt in court. Our hero accuses Nick of negligence, because he did not confess directly to the murder of Ames and Darby, but only said that he wished them dead. In addition, these criminals could have been killed by anyone, so the jury is likely to side with the man who lost his family, Clyde. However, if Nick delivers an orthopedic mattress to Clyde's cell, he will get a heartfelt confession from him. In parallel to these events, a courier brings to Nick's house a disc with a videotape of the massacre of Darby, which scares his wife and daughter very much. Upon learning of this, Nick is very angry, but gives in to his colleagues' entreaties to close the case as soon as possible. In the end, Clyde's request is granted and a mattress is brought to the man. Soon the trial takes place, but our hero does not keep his word, and tells the judge that the prosecution does not have enough evidence of his guilt, and therefore, if he is not released on bail, Clyde will consider it as a violation of his constitutional rights. To make it more convincing, the man mentions a supposed precedent, and the judge, believing the man's words, is ready to let Clyde go. Suddenly, however, Clyde begins to insult the woman, and accuse the judge of believing his lies and almost letting him go home even though he killed 2 people. Clyde is sure that because of such judges who don't know the law, hundreds of criminals go free every day. In the end, the judge denies our hero bail, and he is returned to prison. The next day, Clyde makes a heartfelt confession to Nick. However, when Nick was about to leave, the man suddenly offers a new deal. So, if exactly at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Clyde's cell, bring a large steak on the bone with a side dish, and turn on the music, Clyde will tell where to look for the missing lawyer Darby. Nick, though reluctant, decides to honor the prisoner's request. However, the steak delivery is 8 minutes late due to the prison manager's unwillingness to go along with the inmate's request. In the end, having received a tasty lunch, Clyde gives the coordinates of the lawyer's location, and Nick flies by helicopter to the specified place. Soon Nick finds a hiding place in the ground, and a dead lawyer with an oxygen mask on his face. It turns out that the oxygen stopped flowing to the man at exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes. It took Nick 15 minutes to fly from the prison by helicopter, and it turns out that if Clyde had gotten his lunch delivered on time, the lawyer would be alive. In parallel with these events, Clyde brutally kills his cellmate with a steak bone, after which he is transferred to the punishment cell. Afterward, Nick returns to the prison and asks Clyde why he tortured and killed his victims. Clyde replies that people have a responsibility to be accountable for their words and actions. Nick then gives the man back the bracelet made by his daughter and asks the question, would his dead wife and daughter approve of the murders? Clyde replies that they don't care anymore. Soon Sarah finds interesting information on Clyde. It turns out that the prisoner has several paid bills from the Department of Defense and 9 properties registered first to him, and then rewritten to a certain Panamanian corporation. The district attorney, taking advantage of old connections, together with Nick comes to meet with the government spy. The man tells them that Clyde is a born strategist, specializing in covert operations, and are capable of taking down anyone at a distance. He also says that the Department of Defense has always turned to Clyde when it was necessary to eliminate unwanted people without leaving evidence. So if Clyde wants to get rid of someone, no one can stop him, so the best way to stop him is to just shoot him in his cell. The next day, Nick and the prosecutor come to a federal judge and convince the lady to put Clyde in total isolation, as he is much more dangerous than he seems. The judge agrees, but does not have time to sign the document, because she is killed by an explosive device planted in her phone. After that, Nick returns to prison and tells Clyde that revenge will not help him get his family back, but these words make the man furious. The prisoner states that this is not revenge, but a war he has declared on the entire corrupt justice system. Clyde then makes a new demand to Nick: either he will be released before 6 o'clock in the evening and all charges will be dropped, or he will destroy everyone. Nick doesn't believe Clyde, and refuses to release him. The man, along with Sarah, starts checking the files of all the inmates in the prison, assuming that Clyde has a partner. At 6 o'clock nothing happens, and Nick lets everyone go home. However, Nick soon had to regret his decision, because the cars along with 6 employees and Nick's colleagues were blown up, and among the dead was Sarah. Later, near the prison wall, the police found a radio transmitter that had detonated the car bombs. Fearing for the lives of his family, Nick sends them away from the city. Next, Nick returns to prison, and there he beats up Clyde, demanding that the man immediately stop killing innocent people. Clyde replies that if Nick hadn't surrendered 10 years ago, even if he'd lost the trial and Ames and Darby hadn't gone to jail, it would still be enough for him that Nick had done his best to see justice done, but Nick hadn't. Now Clyde vowed that he would destroy this corrupt justice system. Sarah's funeral takes place, to which Nick and the prosecutor arrive. However, they do not suspect that there is another person at the cemetery besides them. This person remotely controls a robot equipped with a whole arsenal, which first disables all the electronics in the cars, and then shoots and blows up the prosecutor's car. Depressed by the incident, Nick resigns. However, the mayor of the city not only does not accept the lawyer's resignation, but also appoints Nick as the new district attorney. The mayor then declares a state of emergency in the city, and Nick turns his energies to studying the Clyde case. Suddenly, Nick receives a letter from Sarah's boyfriend, Chester, who decided to help the investigation and sent a list of Clyde's expenditures on the acquisition of industrial facilities over the past 10 years. After analyzing the data, Nick discovers that Clyde owns a warehouse right outside the prison. The prosecutor and his colleague immediately go to the address. The men thoroughly investigate the premises and find an underground tunnel. As they walk through the tunnel, the prosecutor finds a wide variety of clothing, plans of government buildings, monitors broadcasting images from video cameras in the prison, and weapons. As they walk deeper down the tunnel, they discover diggings leading to all of the prison cells. Clyde's holding cell, however, turns out to be empty. Meanwhile, Clyde, disguised as a janitor, infiltrates the mayor's office and plants a powerful bomb right under the meeting room where the mayor was going to hold a press conference in just an hour. Nick realizes that Clyde is plotting to take out the mayor and other employees and goes to City Hall. Nick notices a janitor's cart on one of the floors, and the prosecutor rushes there with the sapper. Just as Nick expected, there is a large suitcase standing in the empty hall. The sapper carefully looks inside the suitcase and discovers a device inside, the explosion of which could blow up the entire building. After a while, the mayor calls a press conference, and Clyde returns to his holding cell. However, our hero is greatly surprised by Nick's presence. The prosecutor recognizes Clyde's intelligence and tries to persuade the man not to activate the bomb, as with this ruthless murder he will desecrate the memory of his family. The prosecutor also adds that he has learned his lesson and will never make a deal with the killer again, and if Clyde decides to activate the suitcase, he will face the consequences of his actions. But despite Nick's words, Clyde activates the bomb anyway. The prosecutor immediately warns the prisoner that he has no more than 25 seconds to live, and in a hurry he leaves and locks the cell. At the same time, another policeman locks the tunnel exit, and Clyde is perplexed to find the bomb under his bed. Soon an explosion occurs and Clyde dies clutching the bracelet that his favorite daughter gave him on the day of her death. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.